You are tuned in to The Road Home with over 12,000 members of the Truckers Service Association. We are proud to bring the voice of The Road Home. I'm John Piper, your host. And today, you may think what we're going to be talking about is boring. We're talking about truckers insurance. It's boring until you get a rate increase or just flat out get canceled. I'm joined today by two transportation risk experts, Jacob Pipkin and Tyler Manhusen from TrueNorth, and I'm going to bring them on live right now. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hi, John. Thanks for having us.
Hey, it's my pleasure. You guys have been on before. I know, Jacob, we've had you on before. You've been in the insurance and risk space for many years. If you could, Jacob, just tell us a little bit about TrueNorth Insurance and your role there at the company.
Yeah, so Jacob Pipkin, been with TrueNorth for just over 12 years now. Spent all of that time in transportation risk. So working with independent contractors and large motor carriers on their insurance needs. My role today is Senior Vice President of Operations. So I oversee our service staff and our support team members to really ensure that our clients get what we promise them and what they need.
Well, Jacob, that's fantastic. I'm going to bring up Tyler. Tyler, if you could share with the audience a little bit about your role there at the company and how you impact independent contractors.
Absolutely. Thanks again for having us on. My name's Tyler Manhusen, and I've been with TrueNorth right at 7 years now. The entire time I've been in the transportation space, and I am part of a team that helps independent contractors with their insurance needs, and then also our select primary division, which helps drivers go run under their own authority. So making sure that they understand the coverages and understand what they need when they're out there on the road.
Well, hey, thank you so much. Well, guys, let's get right into it. I know the drivers that tune into the Road Home, we've gotten feedback. They get some great ideas and tips to run their business. A lot of folks outside of trucking don't realize this, but there's a lot of truckers that own their own business. They're independent contractors. They own one, sometimes maybe two or three trucks, have other drivers, but most of them are an army of one, a solopreneur. So, Jacob, to start with you, what types of insurance do independent contractors really need?
Yeah, you know what, John, I think you actually nailed that in your intro. People often forget that independent contractors are business owners. And so they really need some of the same types of coverages that any other business would need. First and foremost, protecting their asset, their truck. So ensuring they have physical damage in the event that their truck is stolen or involved in an accident. Then there's coverages like their non-trucking liability or bobtail, which is really intended to be their liability while they're not operating under the motor carrier's direction. Both are very important and both help protect that truck and their business. Secondarily to those coverages would be some type of work injury, whether that's occupational accident or work comp. The worst thing that can happen to an independent business owner is suffering some type of injury and not having compensation for while they're out of work. Again, work comp or occupational accident would both be great coverages to ensure somebody can stay on the road and keep trucking.
Hey, great stuff there. Back to you, Tyler. What are some of the factors that can affect insurance pricing? I know, just being an outsider, I've been around the trucking industry a long time, but I hear on freightwaves.com, transport topics, just insurance in general, inflationary pressures, everything, it costs more to repair. But what are some things that are really impacting the pricing for independent contractors' policies?
Yeah, absolutely. You touched on it a little bit there with just the inflation on the cost of repairs. So one of the big things right now is the age of the equipment. How old the truck, how available parts are, that plays a part in, some of the pricing that individuals are getting out on the road. Also, the type of commodity that they're going to be hauling. Pricing for someone who's going to be hauling gas is going to be a little bit different than somebody who's hauling dry van, just general freight. And then also what part of the country you're driving in. If you're driving in the Midwest, open roads to a sense, it's not as risky as somebody who's up in the Northeast. And then those, and your driving record, of course, that is a big one. So those four are the main areas that they look at. There are some other smaller, pieces that can affect the pricing, but those four are the big ones.
Tyler, to piggyback on that, a lot of the independent contractors I know, and We were just talking before we hit the record button how important professional drivers are. I got started in the trucking industry working nights and weekends and just had an affinity towards a professional driver. Many early mornings at 2, 3 a.m., I'd be sitting out in the driver lounge with the driver, talking about their trip. That was real important for me early on in this industry. Many independent contractors will lease on to a much bigger fleet. A lot of the large fleets that if you're driving up and down Interstate 35 or across I-20, very recognizable fleets, typically have a percentage of independent contractors that are contracted to haul a portion of their freight. So a question is, and I hear this a lot out there, Tyler, is will the large fleet, will they provide any of the insurance for the independent contractor?
Yeah, they will. Typically speaking, the carrier that the individuals are going to lease on with, they're going to provide what is needed so they can protect their business and the general public. And what kind of fits into that normally is the auto liability, cargo, and general liability. Those are the three main coverages that are going to be offered when you go lease onto somebody. But within your ICOA, the contract that you sign with the company that you're leasing onto, you really should take a peek at that, because there could potentially be gaps on what you are going to need to have coverage with and what they want you to have coverage. So if there is a gap within that ICOA, I think it's important that you look into that and make sure you are properly covered.
Hey, good stuff. Let's switch gears back to Jacob. This is one that I was kind of on the bleeding edge of this technology probably 6-7 years ago. I wouldn't call it bleeding, but it wasn't really readily adopted yet. Jacob, and we're talking about cameras. When I first got in the business and we put satellite tracking on trucks, some of these trucks behind us, drivers were like, oh, you start tracking me and I'm going to quit. Oh, then they realize it's a tool to help them in their business. Well, we saw the same things with cameras, Jacob, when a camera is not only outward looking, but if there's a camera in somebody's face, boy, they don't like that too much, especially a driver that spends, 7, 14, sometimes 21 days in the cab of that truck. Could you address some of those issues and concerns, but then more importantly, how it impacts the independent contractors' premiums and how they're rated with risk?
So cameras still, I think, really feel a little bit like Big Brother to many out there, and we haven't seen wide adoption by independent contractors in particular. But what I will say is from the data we've been able to review as an insurance industry, both outward and inward facing cameras have really been a nice bonus for the trucking industry. It's easy for a passenger vehicle to point the finger at a truck if they're involved in some type of accident, and having the outward facing camera confirm and more often than not confirm the truck driver side of the story as opposed to some passenger vehicle on the road. It's been really overwhelming. It's great to see that it's not just blamed on the trucker because they're on site. They typically have the best access to technology. So we're starting to see a much higher percentage of both employee and independent contractor drivers utilizing outward facing cameras. The inward facing cameras, to your point, John, still feel a little bit, I guess, too burdensome for many drivers. I will tell you that some of the success stories that we've heard, though, are those cameras where they're identifying a behavioral change or a distracted driver and alerting that driver before an accident. Many of the insurance companies are willing and able to produce those videos to use for driver training. We think they're phenomenal, and I totally understand why it's been hard to adopt. What I can tell people, though, is one, if you're ever involved in an accident and you're being brought into a debate of fault, it's so much better to have proof on your side that shows, what you were doing and that you were behaving properly, as opposed to it just really being a matter of one person pointing the finger at another party. So I've been a big fan of the cameras. We're starting to see insurers who are incentivizing motor carriers and independent contractors alike for having cameras. So I'm in full support and think it's something where our industry is going to have to adapt and learn to live with these, because it is necessary.
I agree with that. I think, the professional driver is in the top, 1 to maybe 5% of all drivers on the road. No doubt about it. You and I know that. The general public does not. A lot of times they'll see a big crash on, NBC, ABC, Nightly News, CNN, you name it. It's what people remember, right? They see a big pile up, but the cameras just continue to enhance and improve safety, which is so important. And I think it's really going to change the perception, to your point, Jacob, to really reduce some of those nuclear verdicts and the real litigious court system that we're still faced with here, at least in the United States, and really help impact and improve not only driver safety, but the rates that they're paying for their insurance. Tyler, I know you're really focused on technology there at TrueNorth. If you could piggyback on that about the cameras, what are some of the other technologies that can help reduce risk and reduce premium as well?
Yeah, a lot of the insurance companies, they're interested in having the data. So if you're able to give access to your ELD, the electronic logging device, to them, that is going to save you quite a bit of premium each year, providing them access to that information.
This also talk about, in this market, have you seen many independent contractors that aren't able to renew their policy?
Yeah, we have. We normally have an insurance market for everyone, but it comes down to the pricing. So sometimes the premiums are so high that the individual can't renew because of the premium amount. It just doesn't make business sense to pay that amount. So being able to find ways to get, affordable pricing is important. And one of the most important ways to do that is, establish a top-notch safety program and make sure that you use that and abide by that.
The professional driver has so much of a burden on them to just do everything involved in just really picking up and delivering freight from point A to point B, making sure their tractor's operational, that they can purchase fuel, take care of their home life, on and on and on. And we were talking, and as I kick the show off, insurance is kind of an afterthought for a lot of people. And, they might think, that's the last thing I want to do. Or they put it on the bottom of their to-do list. And they say, I'll get to that next week. And to the point where next week is almost too late for renewal and they get in a real pickle. Tyler, what are some tools that independent contractors can use to maybe search and procure the best policies and coverage for their business?
I think one of the most important steps to start would be, general agents don't know enough about the transportation industry. Like you mentioned, there are so many nuances to this industry. You can't expect a general agent to understand all of them. So working with a specialist is extremely important. Just like I mentioned earlier about the ELD, some agents may not know that you get discounts for providing that information, or they may not know what an ELD is unless they look into it. So having that specialized knowledge on what the truck driver is having to go through on a day-to-day basis is extremely important. And, you touched on how litigious everything's getting. These laws and regulations, they're changing by the day. And making sure you're with an agency that understands that and is keeping an eye on that for you, it takes a little bit off of their plate so they don't have to worry about keeping up with the government's laws, on top of everything else they are. So getting set up with a specialized agent is very, very important.
Well, Tyler, great information, and there's probably, 10 or more things that independent contractors can do, to impact underwriting, but let's try to keep everything simple today. That's how I think we all like to operate, in simple terms. So what would you say are the top 3 things that an independent contractor can do that can impact underwriting?
I'd recommend not trying to be a jack of all trades. Stick to something and do it very well. Don't try to haul every single load if it's oversized or hazmat. Stick to what your specialty is. I think that's very important. The second piece would be make sure you're honest on your application. If there's something that's showing up on a cab report about your business or an accident that's on your motor vehicle record, be upfront with your agent about it. We can help explain some of those things to the insurance company, and it wouldn't be as big of a deal unless, outside of hiding it. If you're trying to hide it, there's red flags that go with that. And then we mentioned it earlier, it's being able to implement a safety program. Those 3 things, it doesn't matter if you have 1 truck or 1,000, being able to outline those 3 things to the insurance company is very, very important. And it lets the insurance company know you're all about safety.
Jacob, I've been I started off in the trucking operations side, but I've been on the technology side most of my career. What I'm seeing is a big movement toward online learning, for all of us, whether you're driving a truck or not, just getting content online through a mobile device, a phone or an iPad. And I'm seeing a big movement towards, like safety videos and other content where a driver can access from their smartphone or their tablet too while they're on the road, and a great way to stay connected with friends and family. So there's some great suggestions. And hey, I think last question for today's segment, independent contractors are business owners. I had our friend Todd Amen on just last month talking about taxes and, the ability to put more money in the bank at the end of the year. And hey, it's been a record 18 months, 24 months for drivers, for independent contractors. But as we all know, one accident, one rate increase can wipe out a bunch of the profits that owner-operators try to take home. But is there one or two ideas you have just in general for business owners, independent contractors to improve their business over the next 2 to 3 years?
I'm going to go back to the safety program. I think it is extremely important and imperative as you're laying out this business plan to the insurance company of how you're going to own and operate your own trucking company, whether it be yourself or you're hiring on company drivers or independent contractors, making sure everybody is aware of how important safety is to you. We had touched earlier on the nuclear verdicts. That doesn't just apply to those large carriers that we've been talking about. It applies to everybody out there on the road. And the more effort and importance you put on safety, the insurance company is going to look at you much more differently than they are the rest of those that aren't.
Hey, I just want to thank both of you guys. Man, a lot of value there, a lot of information in a real short window. So for all the professional drivers out there, make sure you share this out to other drivers so they can get some insight and information from our friends at TrueNorth Insurance. Tyler, Jacob, we really appreciate you, and we look forward to having you both on in a future segment. Any other message you have for the professional drivers that might be tuned in right now?
I think, John, really appreciate the opportunity here. Maybe a closing note, as we've touched on a couple of times, is just really thinking through your business and having a well thought out business plan and approach. It's not different for a truck owner operator than it is for a restaurant or some other Main Street type business. So just a well thought out approach is always key.
Tyler, any parting comments from you, sir?
Just everybody be safe out there, and thank you.
Well, hey, thank you all for tuning in to The Road Home. Again, a featured podcast brought to you monthly by the Trucker Service Association. And to reach our friends at TrueNorth Insurance, you can just go to tntruck.com or give them a call at 877-968-8785. We'll put that in the show notes. Make sure to reach out to those folks for additional safety tips and guides and an abundance of resources. Thank you so much for tuning into this one. We'll see you down the road.